As a salesperson, I feel I have a moral responsibility to help you make that change before it becomes unmanageable, before it costs you your business or your family or something catastrophic. No, I don't see good salespeople as charlatans, but I see them as really necessary parts of society.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk.
Warning! This is a public service announcement. The Walk in Victory podcast is where we have conversations purposed to evolve lives. You may not want to evolve. Then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
Okay.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening to or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are listening to me at another episode of Walk in Victory. The seasons change, the times change, everything changes. But one thing that doesn't change, that has changed, is our mindset. Some years ago, when they were measuring the mentality of people and how they would transform, they said between the ages of 0 to 8, 9, some said 7, that the brain stopped. And that was now they were right about one thing. They said that's the most fertile ground that the minds transform. But something happened along the way. I went to college. I changed some more after 19. I played basketball, football. I learned schemes and all those things. So what they were attempting to say is that the brain shut down. So that tied into, and I know this is about to be a little bit deep, but we're going to get into, I'll only go as deep as the person I can conform with or conversate with. That went to the Epicurean and the Stoic mentality. Epicureans and the Stoic mentality was, if your father was a carpenter, you were a carpenter. If your mother was a housekeeper, you can only ascribe to be a housekeeper. They thought that because the reading of mentality did not align with the transformation of a mentality, then a person couldn't be transformed past a certain stage or age. So in that Stoic time in the Roman Empire, if a person, if a child, an adolescent was adopted, they never said in an American mentality, that child is adopted. So he might not be like that, because they understood that they can transform the mindset of the child that was adopted. But you got to really think about this. And I'm going to leave my intro short. You got to really think about this. This was at the highest time historical thinking. The thinking of that time was at the all-time high. You had your greatest thinkers. We have reduced thinking now, so much so that I always run a joke to my friends because I deal with music. Say if Beethoven got into an Uber and he heard, it's getting hot in here, so take away your clothes. And the guy's driving and he's jamming. And Beethoven says, what is this? Because Beethoven comes from that highest time of thinking where they were using more of their brain. And they said, this is music. How would he feel? Rob, how are you?
I'm happy. Good. I'm listening to you talk. I'm processing it all. Very interesting.
Rob, you're Beethoven.
I'm Beethoven.
You're Beethoven for now.
All right.
We're going to
Okay.
introduce you as who you are.
Okay.
But you're Beethoven.
All right.
You channel down and you hear a Tupac song, and our generation is saying he's the greatest artist that ever lived, or Michael Jackson song. And then Beethoven's, what is this that they're doing? And they say to you, music.
Yeah. No, look, it's all what we connect with. That's why I think I work with a lot of salespeople, for instance. Everybody has their own style. Everybody has their own musical taste. I'm
Oh,
actually,
he taking no. I'm not going to take the PG answer.
Please. You don't like PG?
No, you Beethoven. You wrote some of the most hard
Yeah.
set.
Yeah. But it's not for everybody. I'm okay with that too. My music is for certain people. It's not for everybody. I'm not offended by that. But I do think the better composers, and well, I'm grateful you've got me up there with Beethoven right now. I would hope the greater composers can connect with a greater percentage of people. And I think that's it. But I'm never opposed to somebody who says, I'm not connecting with your music or your words or your program. That's fine. If I thought it was the majority of people, I'd consider changing my music. But no, I to each their own. I'm okay. I don't know if that's PG or where I'm at, but I'm okay with it.
No, and I'm glad that you was authentic, and then we're going to get into that. But I'd love to answer that story.
Okay.
How did you become lenient? Because most entrepreneurs are stoic. They have a
Yeah.
view, they have a product, they
Yeah.
system, and they want to sell that.
Yeah.
They want to find an audience that wants to purchase that. Where most entrepreneurs, coaches, and everything need to be fluid. How did you come to that place?
Okay.
Where
Right.
even when I came back, you came back like, no, because this is the way of entrepreneurship. That you didn't say that.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what you were saying.
Yeah. Okay. So let me answer your question. I work with a lot of authors, for instance, and one of my favorite questions is, I'm not going to ask you how you found that book. I'm going to ask you how that book found you. And I'm saying that in answering your question, a lot of times what you'll find are that entrepreneurs, people who find a passion, it basically finds them. So I was an insurance agent, to answer your question, selling life, health, and disability at the age of 21 years old for the New York Life Insurance Company. And I knew relatively quickly, although my numbers were great, I was number 11 out of 7,800 agents. I was making more money than my dad. I was still living at home. I'm 21. It wasn't that part of it. But I didn't think I was put on this earth necessarily to sell life insurance. And that's the part that began to gnaw away at me, and I couldn't ignore it. And 2 years and 3 months into selling insurance and going all around the country, telling people what a great insurance salesman I was, they even nicknamed me the Rocket in the industry. They put me on little magazine covers. Rocket's taking off. I got into it. I give presentations. Hey, I make room for a rocket. But 2 years and a few months into my career, I was shaving and I didn't want to look at my face while I was shaving, and literally didn't want to look. And that's a hard way to shave, by the way. And I realized this isn't for me. Now, when I say it finds you, believe it or not, I'm sorry I'm taking so long with the story, but it's an important one. I was at a training program and I was sitting there in a bad mood on a bad Monday, complaining with 24 other apprentice field underwriters, new hires of people who were in the first 2 years, and the phone rang. And who picked it up? Me. Could have been anybody. But I picked up that phone that day, and it was the management team. They had been boxed into a parking spot. They couldn't get there to deliver the training. And they said, Jolles, you do it. And I said, what training? What am I doing? And they said, just do something, but don't tell people we're stuck. So I had done some acting in my career, and I figured while I was walking to the front of the room, I'm going to take one of our scripts, sales scripts. It's called the Live, Die, Quit story. This program will take care of you, live, die, or quit somewhere along the way. I'm going to take that and I'm going to teach it like a director, teaching it to actors. They came in about an hour and a half later. They waved me on, meaning whatever you're doing, you keep doing it. And I was up there. It was like a cloud burst. I went, it found me. I know where I'm going now. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I know where I'm going. I didn't find it. It found me.
Well, now, that was a great salo. Tell our audience who you are, what you do, and how you do it.
Yeah. once that call rang, and I got this, it was like an acting fix. I wanted to be an actor, by the way. My dad was a Marine. That Marine wasn't having an actor in the house, okay?
No.
So I was a business major, and I'm a Maryland Terp. I'm a proud Terrapin. So I was a business major, but I did some acting on the sides, and I longed for an audience. So when I found this thing called corporate training, it really lit me up. New York Life taught me to love selling, but I got hired by Xerox. Now I got a really good product, one I believe in. I'm selling for Xerox. I worked my way in to be a trainer, to manage the trainers. I managed the corporate training for Xerox. And as LinkedIn just told me on Friday and outed me, it said 32 years ago, I stepped away from Xerox. I decided I'm going to write I'm going to write my own book. I'm going to do my own seminars, not Xerox seminars. I'm going to take a run at this professional speaking thing. And 7 books later and 3 million miles in the air later, that's who I am. That's what I've done. Coming down the home stretch now, but I've loved every minute of every day of my career. I don't like the flights that cancel, the hotels that are, that we all have nonsense in our careers. But when you say, call my name and hand me a microphone, man, that feels as good as it did 32 years ago.
So let's dive into that now.
Okay.
We're living in now an AI age, digital age. We're living in 32 years. You've seen the transformation,
Oh, yeah.
several transformations.
Yep.
People are upset about the economy and all of those things. Without getting political, because I don't bring it on my show to do that. What will you say to a person that's building the podcast, that's building the industry, that within the industry, that's doing all those things, and they're saying, Rob, I don't know what's going on, because they're going to say, I know what they're going to say because I have a 21-year-old in my house. It was easier when you was doing it.
Yeah.
Which is,
Oh, yeah, they got 2 questions there. First of all, let's go to the easy when you were doing it question later.
yeah,
I will.
question, right?
Yeah. I think the other one, which is the economy and I don't know whether you're from a blue state or a red state. I'm from the state of Maryland. That should tell you all you need to know about me.
My daughter's in Howard University.
Okay.
I'm always there.
Yeah. Okay. I've got 2 daughters and a son, and they're in their 30s, and they're looking to me for leadership. And I really have to just tell them, you got to control what you can control. I'm not sitting on the Senate floor. I'm not sitting in Congress. I'm not invited into the White House, but I can control my emotions. I can control my temper a little bit. And I just have to, I'm a terrible golfer. I barely play, but I know one thing. You play the ball where it lies. Okay. That's how you play the game. Right now, we have to play the ball where it lies. And if you're a red state person and you love where it lies, go put a good swing on the ball. Good for you. But I can't control certain things. And so for me to obsess on them and to let that infect what I am being compensated for, the clients I am working for, my children who are looking to me for leadership, I have to find some place where I can put my mind in theirs to say, we still got to put a good swing on this ball. Okay. I can't cheat. Yeah, go ahead.
That's a great analogy, and I love that. And I don't want to brought you in here to do that. So you want to pivot your answer, because that's a great way that you're training your children. But I don't want you to think that I was coming on here and trying to do that, because that is a hard topic.
I love the topic. I'm glad you asked
Okay.
it. And you and I exchanged a couple emails, and some people will probably say it. They don't walk the walk. I'll answer any question you ask me and enjoy it, because I actually think this is something that we're almost afraid to talk about. So let me just go one sentence further on that, because I'm not afraid. And we haven't, I hope, offended anybody with our response yet. One other curious thing about golf that really amazes me. I played basketball. I know you said you played some sports. I was a point guard. I coached basketball. Okay.
Me too.
Yeah. That's because we're tough. Those that like to talk and run things are point guards. But one thing that's curious in coaching a basketball was, because I had been coached, I always felt when I was coaching my kids and other teams, don't worry, we're going to call timeout about 3 minutes in the game. because we got an amateur coach on the other side, and we're gonna move our chess pieces around, and we're gonna make some moves. But I was always curious that when I watched golf, nobody looked at the scoreboard. And I was thinking, how can I coach or play the game of basketball and forget to look at the scoreboard? I'm making moves based on the scoreboard. But stay with me on this. When you really dive into it, they'll play for 4 days, 72 holes. They'll look with about a hole or two to go because they have to adjust where they are. Other than that, it's brilliant. And it's brilliant because all they're doing is playing their ball. If you and I are playing, what am I doing looking at your ball? How's that helping me hit my ball better? How does that help me line up my putt? As a matter of fact, it distracts me from lining up my putt. And no matter how hard I look at you, it isn't going to change your swing. It doesn't change anything. So I'm trying to follow that, which is let's just play our ball. Okay. And if you want to protest or you want to go ahead, that's your ball. But let's stop worrying about the other person's ball right now. Let's focus on what we're doing. If we can, I know one thing. I can't guarantee success, but I can guarantee you'll put the best swing or the best moves within your business that you can by staying focused on you.
It's funny because I teach mindfulness in marketing. I teach mindfulness in yoga and marketing. I teach a whole lot of stuff. But one of the things that I say to my seniors, so when I teach young people, we talk about mobility. We talk about flexibility with young people. I teach my seniors, you talking about mobility. Let's get some of your mobility back. One way that I've learned and adapted over 12 to 13 years that I've been doing this is that don't worry about the person next to you, man.
Yeah.
They may be more flexible than you. But if you know that you got a shoulder injury, don't worry about flexibility. Worry about mobility. If you heard me say that and you were sitting in the room as the entrepreneur who has trained all these people over the course of time, we're talking about micro movements towards full mobility, towards flexibility, what would you say to me or to our audience?
That's a good question. First of all, I totally agree. And I am a guy that does yoga and a guy that I swim a lot. I do mashup programs. So I got you. And you have to stay within your limits. But I'll say this, you asked me, how would I respond to that? I respond this way. I'm a guy that believes that little things really matter. Even if you looked at me and said, if I do what you just said, I'm only going to become 1% more flexible doing it that way. Why would I want to invest my time and effort into that? And my answer is, first of all, if you don't want that 1%, give it to me, okay? Because I'm always looking for percentages, and most successful people are the first in line. Right, for anything, okay? It's the wannabes that go, well, I already learned that stuff. I don't need to hear from that guy. But not only that, but I'm a pack rat, which means if that's all I was doing, I probably wouldn't be successful. But what if we start accumulating a lot of 1% moves? What if we hydrate before we come to that yoga class? What if we do a little stretching beforehand? What if we eat properly before we go there? What if we really focus on technique as opposed to what's happening to the right and left of us? Each one picks up a little bit. We're going to get a little better. Now we look at the guy in the corner and go, that guy's so lucky. He's lucky. Look what came to him. Maybe lucky, but I'm willing to bet if you track them, you'd find that person's doing any little things well, and we call them lucky. I don't call them lucky at all.
No, they're doing the stuff that you don't want to do.
Because I sometimes refer to as the bully in the brain. Hey, we learned that already. This flippity stretching, whatever it is. I don't want to listen to that bully. I teach sales. Guess what? The number one objection is, and I've trained NASA and hostage negotiators, polygraph examiners. I have the weirdest collection of people, and they all up against the same thing. Fear of change. That's what runs people out there. And listen, people will change. Unfortunately, people typically don't fix small problems. They fix big problems. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because the problem is that we have these sayings, slogans, terms that we live by. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. You can't do this. You can't. And they all start with, I can't. First of all, when I'm teaching, I don't let no one come on my mat saying I can't. I don't let anyone come in saying I can't. I have arthritis. I had a knee replacement. All that stuff we throw it out the window because those things are limiting into the subconscious mind. How important and how impactful. And me and you never really had a conversation, right? So if I'm going to some place that we can't go into,
Let's go.
the subconscious mind or the mindset is in sales, insurance sales guy, car sales guy. Because when I was coming up, every car salesman was a sleazy car salesman. We called them that. Oh, you don't want to go to him. He's a sleazy car salesman. So how important is mindset, reframing of conversation, and all of the things that you may have taught over several books, your teaching analysis. And I did not read on LinkedIn. I only have 16 followers on LinkedIn. If you listening and we're on LinkedIn together, follow me. But when I read what you did, this was a conversation that I wanted to have. So I wanted to precursor that by asking and finishing that question. When you took all of your superpowers and everything that you amassed over the course of your generations, and even the transformations, because I know your first book is not like your last book, what were some of the things that you could see and told to your audience?
Wow. Okay. That's awfully big questions. Things I'm so told.
I'm going to be quiet. I can mute and I'm going to let you go.
All right. Come back in 10 minutes. I'll be done. I have to.
I was supposed to interview last week, so I've been thinking about this a long time. That's my main question. And after this,
it's okay. Listen, I enjoy the conversation. I told you the hard part for a lot of times is, and you and I spoke about this, is finding the time to talk. Once we're here, let's go. Okay. So I have to cherry pick how I'm going to answer that question. First of all, my first book was Simon & Schuster, big sales bulkier for Rob, talked all about selling. You got to get in there. If they cry, they'll buy. So you got to cut them and bleed them. Now you see that wound, you got to go for the eye, open up that wound. All kinds of stuff like that.
All the catchphrases.
Yo, man, it was raining catchphrases. And then I realized after 20 years of teaching sales, half my audience, they're struggling not because they don't know how to sell. They're struggling because they don't know why they're selling. They think, just like you said, sleazy salesperson, car guy, whatever. Toyota's a client of mine for over 20 years. I actually don't see it that way. I think there's bad salespeople and good salespeople, but there's bad lawyers and good lawyers. Last time I looked, I need good lawyers to help me interpret the law. Good doctors, bad doctors. I need good doctors to keep me healthy. Good salespeople, bad salespeople. I need good ones to get me over that fear of change, to help me fix something before it becomes a big problem. And when we have the skills to do that, we can take our seat right next to that doctor or lawyer or any other professional, because we are vital. We are vital in this food chain of people. So the first thing I'll tell you is, that's why I wrote this one book called How to Change Minds. I took the dollar signs off the cover. I'm not here to make any more money. I'm here to help you help people, loved ones, children, spouses, someone who may have an addiction problem. Let's sell them too. I'm not in it for the commission. I'm in it because I want to help you change your mind. I don't want to manipulate you, but I am here to influence you. And I didn't think that was being talked about enough. And so that's been, as we talk about evolution, that's how I've evolved. I'm not here to make you more money than you've ever made in your life. Okay, if you want to do that, these are some skills. I'm here because I think it's not mean, it's merciful when we help people who need our help, but we don't have skills. So right off the bat, that's one. And just one other real quick one, because I said I could cherry pick this one, just keep rolling. I really think, because you were leaning on it early in the question, when you said words matter, I'm 100% agreement with you. I actually wrote a piece fairly recently called, I think it was called, I'll Try versus I Will. There's certain things we hedge our bets a lot. I'm going to try and make this level of success. Listen, all that is a monopoly get out of jail free card. Look, I only said I'd try, so if I try, no, I will. And you know what? If I fail, I'll take that little punch in the nose, I'll wipe off the little bit of blood, and I'll try harder in the morning. But I think there's all sorts of ways we hedge our bets. Let's not be so afraid to fail, okay? We learn from failure. Yeah, I see you wincing. I'm not talking about a massive.
What you so
Oh, okay.
because
I thought I'm reading him. I thought he was wincing
when I
on me.
put my glasses on, get the glare. So
Okay.
now I'm like, I've got
Yeah.
20 more minutes because once you said that, I had another question for you, and I know we're going to
Good. I'll wrap this one up. Let's watch how the words that we use, even when we start beating ourselves up. Boy, you come on, stupid. Where's your pen? If you had two brains, you still wouldn't be smart enough to be able to turn this computer on. We think that's funny. I don't think it's funny. I think if you keep talking to yourself that way, you start believing it. So a lot of this is how we talk to ourselves. Let's not be so afraid to fail. Put yourself out there. Take a risk. Boy, it's a sweet victory when you you probably weren't alive for this one. I think I was 15 years old or so I think I was 10 years old when the New York Jets beat the Baltimore Colts. And Joe Namath said, I guarantee you we're going to win this game. They were 16.5-point underdogs. Look, it was a good chance. If they played them 10 times, they're probably going to lose 9. But not that day. And they got out there. And I think that actually affected me as a 10-year-old of what's wrong with putting ourselves out there? If you lose the game, work harder and let's get them next year.
I'm a Jet fan.
Okay.
There hasn't been another next year.
It's a little while, yeah.
We Patriots. And the next quote after that is what he said is, I was about to make Bart Scott with the guy from Boston, Tim Garnett. You got to leave, but Bart Scott does something like that. They overplayed that whole beating the Patriots hand. But in sales, it's easy to lose the luster. You can have a great month. I went from construction, my first business, and I never viewed construction as sales until I met someone that was doing sales construction. And I realized that's what I was doing. I'm really like selling our product, goods, and services. But I never viewed it that way because I felt like I was just going out and convincing. What's the difference between sales and convincing someone that you have a good product, good or service, and sell where you have a strategic plan, where you understand your audience and you're going out and doing it in a way that's not just convincing, but we understand that we're selling.
Okay. My answer to that question is I don't see a difference. I actually don't. Yep. I'm here to convince you. Now, if you get convinced before I have an opportunity to convince you, which happens in sales. Okay, let me tell you, you know what? We're going to get it. No, hold on. I need to convince you first. Oh, no. I'm not. It's not a straitjacket. But most people do need a little bit of convincing. And as I said, they'll find religion, but they'll find it after a catastrophic occurrence. Okay.
All right. Being that you said that so blatantly, because I want our audience to get this, because I think that maybe I didn't position my question that well.
Okay.
When do you switch from convincing to selling? When was that trigger where you're like convincing the person that your company is the one to go with, your price, your product, and everything? Because we do have to come in to convince them to trust us. But then I don't want to sound like a charlatan, but there has to come a place where we switch to the cord. We've been in sales for X amount of years where we thought, because then, now I don't want to answer too.
All right, let me answer your question. Let me jump.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
There's a little bit of scar tissue I want to clear out with you, but we're going to do that.
Yes.
The whole charlatan thing needs to be talked about.
No, because you feel like that.
I understand. That's why I say we need to clean that up. If you feel like that, so does a million other people. Okay,
Yes.
well, that's phase 2. Phase 1 is you're still stuck on convincing and selling. You understand that selling there's a whole list of tactics used in selling. I can't really sell you until you trust me. So I need a tactic, a process. Don't be offended by the word tactic. It just means I'm looking for a measurable way to be able to implement the art of trust. Okay. Once you trust me, I can ask more challenging questions other than, what do you think the weather is? Do you think the Jets will ever win another Super Bowl? Good, but unless I'm selling Super Bowl tickets, we're wasting our time. So I've got to earn the right to say, tell me what's not working here, okay? I can't walk in and go, how you doing? Good to see you. Tell me what's not working with you. Nobody's going to offer that. That's part of the sales process. Opening tax is part of the sales process. Objection handling is part of the sales process. I can go on and on. So my suggestion to you is, don't necessarily try and split the terms of convincing and selling. Sometimes all I need to do is create trust, and I don't need to convince you so much. It's all part of the same package, though. But I think the bigger picture is this feeling that so many have, including you, because I've heard it come from a few different times, not offending me. It's a good conversation to have, which is the views of salespeople. When I'm going to start selling, I'm doing something bad in some way. And I happen to think that from doing this for as long as I have, that when you help somebody and create change before a major catastrophe happens, let's take your car. Maybe your car is, I'm going to make this up. People come up to me all the time. My car is 10 years old. I'm still on the first transmission. Good. Clearly, the transmission will never break on your car. But once it does, and somebody pays $5,000 for a transmission, you go, boy, I wish I had sold that, about 2 years before. Of course you did. But whatever pain you were feeling, it wasn't enough. As a salesperson, I feel I have a moral responsibility to help you make that change before it becomes unmanageable, before it costs you your business or your family or something catastrophic. No, I don't see good salespeople as charlatans. I see them as, I don't want to, the word savior comes to mind, but it's a little too strong. But I see them as really necessary parts of society.
No, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I don't see salespeople as charlatans. I know where I grew up in communities, we rode the radio stations with car ads during tax seasons. We like there's behaviors that lean into that mindset, right?
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that the guy that's coming that came after the ad is that. So when we're sparring, we're having the conversation. I'm a sales guy. And so I want people to understand that just because a person is saying, hey, you have to pay me for my service, doesn't mean that person is saying, I want to take advantage of you. We have had an uptake from COVID of coaches and people that don't even have the license or the lenience or the historic background to say, hey, pay me $8,000 and I'm going to coach you to success. But they've done it because they can turn on the camera and say, I'm a coach. And that's what, when I say charlatans, that's what I'm leaning towards. Same thing with car salesmen and same thing with anybody else. Kobe, the guy who come in with the vacuum cleaner and he's doing his thing. So I'm not disparaging because we all have to sell.
Yeah.
And this is why I feel like a lot of business fail, because they don't want to make the sell.
Yeah.
They want to convince that they're in a position to sell. And you have the last say on this topic.
Yeah. First of all, I think they're so misguided because, as you said, they want to convince before they sell. Well, bad news for you. What do you think convincing is? Let's look at some synonyms for that. Let's put it in a thesaurus. Guess what's going to come up? Sell. Okay. So you're saying the same thing, but can I tell you how prevalent this point is? I'm sure you've seen the Capital One commercials. What's in your wallet?
Yes.
The guy goes on and on. Did you know the first one that was ever played offended me at such a deep level that it's the first and only time in my life that I went as viral as I could, hit it on the Huffington Post everywhere I could and said, how dare they take the commercial off? And it was because of one line. Here it is. This is a bank. This is my bank. I'm actually a Capital One customer. This is a bank that within their commercial, while they were saying we're building welcoming places with smoothies and muffins, but the line was, we're here to help you, not sell you. Now, this is one of the biggest banks in the country that has made a statement right there that said, clearly, when I'm selling you, I'm apparently not helping you. I think it's the complete opposite way. I don't care where you get your smoothie, and I don't care where you get your muffins, okay? I care about your children's education, your retirement, and protecting everything you've worked your entire life for. Now, if you think that's worth looking for smoothies and muffins, go for it. I'm here to ask you questions you've never asked yourself, and so I am here to sell you on change. That's what a great salesperson does.
I think that a lot of people don't want to feel like they're being sold, even when situations that they know that they're going to be sold in. If I'm looking for a new car,
Yeah.
I'm looking to be sold. Because I'm going to ask the sales guy, what else can you give me? You know what I'm asking him? What can you sell me? And if we want to avoid those conversations, then don't go to the car dealership. Don't contact a realtor. Don't listen to this conversation. Because you're listening to two sales guys who has done it at the top of their level. I really appreciate the fact that you took time out to sit down with me for an hour and to really not only dive deep into the mindset, but to also challenge me and to challenge the audience about the way that we look at and view ourselves. Because the sales guy doesn't have to be the sleazy sales guy.
No.
We were found in one, but everyone is not that thing. And you don't have to come in and figure it out. I'm not going to get you. Because if a sales guy is trained properly, then you tell us about 3 or 4 ethics that a sales guy who's trained properly, who understands what they're going to do for a customer. What are some of the 3 or 4 things that they think about?
Okay. It all starts with trust, because think of it like building a house. I don't know how to build a house. You're the construction guy, but I believe you need really good footings, and you better, or everything you do from here on is not going to work out well for you. Okay. Yeah. The footings to me are trust. How do we really go anything, particularly on asking more challenging questions? So start with trust. And oh, by the way, it's harder than it sounds to process, but that's basically shut up, ask questions, know what an open probe is. Don't worry about asking questions you know the answers to. The more the client talks, the more they're going to connect with you. But number 2, you said 3, so I'm going to give you 2. Number 2 is urgency. I really believe that's the big deal. Most people won't invite you in for a conversation if they don't know they have a problem. This challenge is, are they going to fix it or not? Okay. And a lot of times people give you a sense of a problem. We fix it for them and they want to think about it. They knew this problem existed for the last 2 years. We have to create urgency. And the way we do that is we dive deeper into the problem. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but if you ever ridden a motorcycle, but I had one for a short period of time when I was in college. And I had an uncle who told me only 2 types of motorcycle riders: them that's been down or them that's going down. And it will ruin your ride, by the way. But to me, there's a lot of times there's only 2 types of businesses that are living with problems, but no urgency to fix it: them that's been down or them that's going down. So we go deeper and deeper. All right, 3 tactics. So I'll give you a third one. Yeah, okay. Because I can give you 25. I think we have to remind ourselves that when we get an objection in a sales situation or any situation, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. You can ask me, or maybe you're too embarrassed. Ask my competition. I'd rather answer the question than my competition. I'll give you a better answer. But one of our mistakes is that we often think we know what the objection is when we don't. Most people won't tell you the whole objection. It'll be vague. And so we do a hit and spread. I'll just give you 6 answers. One of them will be right. When we clarify an objection, tell me more about that. What we do is we typically get to the heart of it. We look a little less defensive, and we make sure when it's our turn to talk, we can provide a simple explanation to their question. Without clarifying, we're really running into problems. Those would be my 3 I'll cherry pick for you.
Early in my sales days, what I would do, for customers' response. And I would do that early. I did that early in my podcast. But I grew up in the streets. So in the streets, you're watching the person's body language, and you're anticipating what they're going to say. So you're not really listening.
Right.
You're trying to anticipate what they're going to say. And you're trying to be quick. So and then we do this. So we're trying to hear a rejection before the rejection comes. Right. So that you can give them something that's going to soothe them to take that immediate purchase. And I took that into my early business. And it's the first time I'm ever mentioning this out loud. I took that into my early, it's like construction was fast paced. And in New York City, and it was dealing with in the early to mid 90s, the mafia and all that. So everybody was fast paced and you had to watch and get surrounded. So you took that and it was almost like the place that I came from. But when I went to home improvement, I realized that I got a lot of no's because I wasn't sympathetic. Early in my podcast career, I got a lot of no's. What I mean by no's, nobody was listening to me because I wasn't listening. I'm trying to tell you your thought process. Now it becomes combative because you're like, hey, you brought me on your show to get as an expert. Now you're trying to tell me how I feel. How does that work in the, because there's a cycle of sales. And this would be, usually I ask the person to tell me their books, but I'm going to ask you, this is my last question to you. In the cycle of sales, someone who's getting rejected because they think that they know it all, what would you say?
Well, I would say that knowledge is probably the most overrated characteristics of sales that there is, which really bothers people, by the way. I make a joke sometimes when I'm speaking in front of a crowd. I look for the biggest guy in the audience. I go, okay, now that I've made that statement, Larry, you're walking me out to my car, because it really should be many salespeople, all they've been is product trained. Somebody called it sales training, but here's this idiot saying, don't overrated. I didn't say unnecessary. I said overrated. You hit on, to me, the two biggest characteristics, which is asking questions and listening. You know that there's only three ways we can communicate. We can ask questions, listen, or make statements. This is an opinion. Xerox did a big study, thousands of surveys. Stack ranked them, said, clients, what do you want from our people? What a shock. Tied at the top. We're asking questions and listening. Making statements, nowhere to be around. And yet, when we're untrained or unconsciously incompetent, means we don't know. What's most salespeople who we've been labeling as the not good ones? They won't stop talking about their product. They don't ask questions. They don't listen. So actually, I think that's a great way to bring this ship in for a landing, because it's the most fundamental move that we've talked about in an hour, and yet it's the most pivotal. You ask questions and listen. People spend 2 days with me in a workshop. I'm 16 tactics. I'm all over the place. They'll welcome guys the rest of my career. I'm going to ask questions and I'm going to listen. And I'm going to keep my questions open early. And I think that's all you got from this. And my other thought is this. If I could look in the future and see for the next 20 years that you hung on to asking questions and listening and knowing where to plug in those open probes and methodically followed it, you just went to the best sales training program you'd ever attend in your life. That's how important it is.
And that's why we sit here at the feet of the masters. I'm going to end this episode by telling the story. Eugene Ruffin, who was Xerox trained, and he's an African-American man from the South, wound up becoming a billionaire with one of Stedman's, Oprah's wife, as she would refer to her, best friends. I had a chance to sit down with him, Rob, and we sat down at the Regent's Hotel in Manhattan. He said, order anything you like, sit down and ask me the questions. And because my mindset was different, but when I left, it took me a couple of years to understand what he said to me. And I'm going to tell you what he said to me. I said, you can ask me anything that you want to. He's a billionaire. And I said, how did you overcome bankruptcy? He said, every poor man that I ever asked me any question, only want to know how I came over the struggle. Nobody asked me how I became what I became. Because to overcome the struggle in sales and book selling and whatever it is not the way. It's understanding who you are selling to. And he always went back to his IBM. He said IBM showed him how to sell. And he took those 5. He said they only gave him 5. The training was a year and a half long, but he walked away with 5 things. And those 5 things, he can sell anything. Find a need, meet a need, which is the first 2 things. Express the need. And a lot of people don't even know who they're servicing. And it took me 5 to 7 years as on a podcast to know who I'm servicing, which is why I can know when I see a person like Rob, this is the person that I need in front of our audience. We're pivoting now into a coaching thing where we're coaching on mindset, mental health, and all of those things. And if you're listening and you are excited about that, hit me up. Our website, hit me up on our email info@walkinvictory.com. You're gonna see in the next few weeks, the website is going to change and transform from this about being about the podcast. And the reason why I was about the podcast, because I didn't really have anything to sell, or I didn't come on to podcasting to sell anything, but I am listening to the audience and I'm saying, okay, if you want me to train you in healthy breathing or free mindset or any of those things, then we're here for you. And you may not even want me to do it. You may hear one of our guests. We have a direct line towards our guests. So this is what we're doing. We want to help you become better because you've invested in us by listening. Your listenership is so well needed and so well wanted. We've grown our audience, and we don't ask you for cash apps. We don't beg you for any money. We don't ask you for Venmos or any of those things. What we do ask is that you support our guests. Their social handle is on our website, walkinvictory.me, that you support anything that we do. And you may not be in a position to do a training right now, but you can have a clarity call. You can do any of those things that at least shape your future for the time. I don't want no one coming on our podcast talking about, oh, the inflation and the economy. We talk about solutions. Don't call me talking about how bad it's going to get when we're giving you solutions to how to combat what you feel may be bad. And you've heard me say this before. One, I don't even want to talk to anybody that never voted. If you're not registered to vote or you didn't vote in this election. Two, it doesn't matter what the economy looks like. You can always overcome it. I grew up in the projects, and this is where I am. So don't walk with your head down. Don't walk making excuses. I know my ending is a little bit longer, and I did this purposefully. And from here on out, every conversation that I have is going to be centered around that, because we offer real solutions to real people. Walk in victory. Peace. I now got to see the end shows.